It's recording,
Now,
and I will, will that be close enough? I think I can
Yes.
zoom it, but I think as long as you,
no, that's fine.
project your
Yeah.
voice forward, then it should be fine. Okay,
No,
Ollie,
no,
let's let
Ollie.
Nonna read.
Now, Ollie, it's time to sleep, but before you go, there's something I really want you to know. I love you much more than a big sandy beach with sand dunes so high they seem far out of reach. I love you much more than the things that we've made on a hot sunny day with a bucket and spade. To build a castle from sand would be great, with seaweed for a roof and seashells for a gate. We could run to the rocks and could use them as blocks. And for a flag on the top we could use someone's socks. I love you much more than a big sandy beach. I love you much more than the sun, moon and stars, even much more than the red planet Mars. I love you much more than the outer space tune sung to the world by the man on the moon. If we could fly in a big rocket ship, what fun we would have on our magical trip. We could speed through the clouds to the heavens above and tell outer space aliens about love. I love you much more than the sun, moon and stars. I love you much more than the burning bright sun. I love it so much when we play and have fun. I love you much more than the world's tallest trees, even much more than a hug and a squeeze. If we were a bee, think of all we could see as we fly to the top of the world's tallest tree. We could fly all around the daisies and roses, floating on the air with sweet smells for our noses. I love you much more than the burning bright sun. I love you much more than the deepest blue sea. I love you so much when you swim beside me. I love you much more than the sea's octopuses going to school on their submarine buses. If we could sail on a big pirate ship, we could walk the long plank and take a quick dip. How great it would be to find us some treasure made up of toys that would be such a pleasure. I love you much more than the deep blue sea. I love you much more than the world's biggest plane that could fly us high up and away from the rain. I love you so much when I hold your sweet hand as we speed through the air to a faraway land. To fly around the world in a big jumbo jet would be a great trip that we'd never forget. High up in the skies we'd get such a surprise to see wonderful things with our very own eyes. I love you much more than the world's biggest plane. I love you much more than a big dinosaur that ruled over the earth with his big scary roar. I love you much more than a big grizzly bear who could sear a T-Rex with a very cross stare. If we could travel back into the past in a big time machine, we would have such a blast. We could find a volcano, dress up as cavemen, and watch it exploding again and again. I love you much more than a big dinosaur. I love you much more than a Halloween night when we dress up as ghosts and give people a fright. I love you much more than a witch loves her broom, mixing up potions in her spell-making room. If we could dress up and do trick-or-treats, we could fill up our bag with some nuts and some sweets. We could light a candle in a big pumpkin's head and eat some of our sweets before we went to bed. I love you much more than Halloween night. I love you much more than a Christmas Eve night when Santa makes Rudolph's red rose shine, when Santa makes Rudolph's red nose shine so bright. I love you much more than the elves' clever tricks used to make presents that every child picks. If we could fly to the North Pole and land, we could deliver our letter to Santa by hand. We could help all the elves load up Santa's sleigh and wave to the reindeers as they fly away. I love you much more than a Christmas Eve night. I love you much more than the world's biggest truck, picking up boulders and scooping up muck. I love you much more than the red dynamite that makes a big bang with red flashes of light. If I drove a crane and you drove a digger, we could both work together to make mountains bigger. We could dress up as builders with bright yellow hats and build some apartments for eagles and bats. I love you much more than the world's biggest truck. I love you much more than the world's biggest slide, even much more than a roller coaster ride. I love you much more than a big theme parade with singing and dancing as sweet music played. To go to a fun park would be such magic. We could buy a big ice cream and give it a lick. Imagine that day if you could be boss. You could buy sugar popcorn and eat candy floss. I love you much more than the world's biggest slide. The person who loves you so much like no other is the person that loves you the most, and your mother. She loves you so much because you grew in her tummy, and that is why she is your wonderful mommy. Night night, sleep tight, my bundle of joy. I love you much more than my favorite toy. My love for you is as bright as sunlight. Sweet dreams, my love, I bid you good night. Night night, sleep tight, my bundle of joy. Night night, Ollie, sleep well, sweet dreams. Now that's the first gone.
Okay, I want to make sure it's
Yeah.
recording. Yep, good, okay.
It is?
Mhm.
Yeah?
Here, I'll turn it there.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
I would have hated
5
to-
little monkeys. Now, Ollie, 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. It was bedtime, so 5 little monkeys took a bath. 5 little monkeys put on their pajamas. 5 little monkeys brushed their teeth. 5 little monkeys said good night to their mama. Then 5 little monkeys jumped on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. The mama called the doctor. The doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So 4 little monkeys jumped on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. The mama called the doctor. The doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So 3 little monkeys jumped on the bed. One fell off and bumped her head. The mama called the doctor. The doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So 2 little monkeys jumped on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. The mama called the doctor. The doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So 1 little monkey jumped on the bed. She fell off and bumped her head. The mama called the doctor. The doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So 5 little monkeys fell fast asleep. Thank goodness, said Mama, now I can go to bed. Now, Ollie, are you my mother? A mother bird sat on her egg. The egg jumped. I must get something for my baby bird to eat, she said. So away she went. Inside the nest, the egg jumped. It jumped and jumped and jumped until out came the baby bird. Where is my mother? He said. It did not see her anywhere. I will go and look for her, he said. Out of the nest he went, down, 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 plop. The baby bird could not fly, but he could walk. Now I will go and find my mother, he said. Are you my mother? The baby first asked a kitten. The kitten just looked and looked. It did not say a thing. Are you my mother? The baby bird asked the hen. No, said the hen. Are you my mother? The baby bird asked a dog. I am not your mother. I am a dog, said the dog. Are you my mother? The baby bird asked the cow. How could I be your mother? Said the cow. I am a cow. The baby bird stopped to think. The kitten and the hen were not his mother. The dog and the cow were not his mother. I have a mother, said the baby bird. I know I do. I will find her. I will. I will. Just then the baby bird saw a big thing. You are my mother, he said. The big thing said, snort. Oh no, said the baby bird. You are not my mother. You are a scary snort. The snort lifted the baby bird up, up, up. Then something happened. The snort put the baby bird right back in the tree. The baby bird was home. Just then the mother bird came back. I know who you are, said the baby bird. You are not a kitten or a hen or a dog. You're not a cow or a snort. You are a bird and you are my mother. Now, Ollie, what about this one? Let's see what this is. All asleep. What about this? All asleep. Whisper softly, take a peep. The babies are fast asleep. All babies, small babies, tall babies, and yes, cozy babies, rosy babies, dozy babies. Babies on mummies and daddy's tummies, in onesies with bows and stripy toes. Babies asleep in cribs, in bibs, babies in cradles, able to rock. Babies on kitchen tables, babies in one sock, babies in tiny houses with cats, sleeping in high-rise towers for hours and hours. Babies with sweet dreams of milky white snow, babies rocking gently to and fro. Babies on airplanes and speeding trains, babies on ships, on the deep blue sea, babies in cars, one baby in a balloon under the stars, beneath the sleepy moon. Even the babies who wake up all night are sleeping now, are sleeping tight. Whisper softly, take one last peep. Shh, the babies are all fast asleep. Now, what else here? That's English. Now, let's see here. Now, what about this? This spider's ABC. I will read this. Love you forever. A mother held her own baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth. back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The baby grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house. He pulled down all the books. He pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would go crazy. This kid is driving me mad. But at night time, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old, and he never wanted to come in for dinner. He never wanted to take a bath, and when Grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at night time, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a teenager. He had strange friends, and he wore strange clothes, and he listened to strange music. Sometimes his mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at night time, when that teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of her bed. If he really was asleep, she picked him up, that big great boy that he was, and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. That teenager grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a grown-up man. He left home and got a house across town. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got into her car and drove across town. If all the lights in their son's house were out, she opened his bedroom window, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of his bed. If that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Well, that mother, she got older. She got older and older and older. One day she called up her son and said, you better come see me because I'm very old and sick. So her son came to see her. When he came in the door, she tried to sing the song. She sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. But she couldn't finish because she was too old and sick. The son went to his mother. He picked her up and rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he sang this song, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy will be. When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. Then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. He picked her up in his arms and very slowly he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you will be. Now, Ollie, a nice good night to you. Now, what do we have here? Miss Spiders. What's this? Jumping pine nuts. Maybe not this one. Hey, my mother. All asleep we did done. This we done. My foot book. Let's see my foot book. Left foot, right foot, feet in the day, feet in the night. Wet foot, dry foot, high foot, low foot. Front feet, back feet, 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 feet. How many different feet you meet? Slow feet, quick feet. Well feet, sick feet. Up feet, down feet. Here come clown feet. Small feet, big feet. Here come pig feet. His feet, her feet. Fuzzy fur feet. In the house and on the street, how many different feet we meet. Now, the 5 little monkeys we've done. Have we done this? Small babies? Yes, done this. Done the baby foot, we've done the mother. We've done these two, that's not my truck. Okay, now a nice truck. That's not my truck. Its tank is too shiny. That's not my truck. Its hubcaps are too rough. That's not my truck. Its mixer is too bumpy. That's not my truck. Its radiator is too holy. That's my truck. Its tipper is so ridgy. Oh, let's see these. Oh, I forgot these. Now, let's see these. Make way for ducklings. Okay, now. Now, let's see this one now. Okay, now listen, Ollie. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly away any further. So there was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Next morning they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. "Good morning," quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer, but the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water, so the Mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast, better than the first. "I like this place," said Mrs. Mallard, as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. "Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better?" "Good," said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. "But look out," squawked Mrs. Mallard. Oliver did her. "You'll get run over." And when she got her breath, she added, "This is no place for babies, with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else." So they flew over Beacon Hill and round the State House, but there was no place there. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Then they flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mr. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice, quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. "That looked like just the right place to hatch ducklings." So they chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to moult. All their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones flew in. But of course they could swim, and one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that the Mallards called on Michael every day. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go to visit Michael anymore, because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water, or to have her lunch, or to count the eggs and make sure they were all there. One day, ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, then Lack, then Mack, and Knack, and Whack, and Pack, and Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like, further on. So off he set. "I'll meet you in a week in the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. She taught them how to swim and dive. She taught them to walk in a line, to come when they were called, and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you can wink an eyelash, Jack and Knack, Lack and Mack, Knack and Whack, Pack and Quack fell into line, just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. There they waded ashore and waddled along till they came to the highway. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 quack went Jack and Cack and Lack and Mack and Knack, Whack, Pack and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other, the way the policemen do, for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to the police booth. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." Meanwhile, Miss Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned into Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Knack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack and Quack all marching in line behind her. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud She tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was a police car with the 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so